Oh no, here he goes again. Dug up a whole nother video's worth of things you wish you knew. Managed to cram it all into one neat little knowledge kebab to beat you all round the head with. But this isn't a video for all you old spacers out there. All you bug-battered backers sculpted by decades afloat a sea of dreams. You who have survived more wipes than a baby's bum. This one is for the new blood. The fresh wallets, the wide-eyed wanderers still convinced they'll stop giving money after their starter pack. If you haven't watched part 1 of this video, I highly suggest you do. It covers a lot of the more basic getting up and running in the game. In this video we're going to lean into some more advanced stuff. Cool keybinds, upgrading your ship components, what are CCU chains, and why you're not really a Star Citizen unless your cockpit has a bobblehead. Let's get on with the show. Okay, so a good place to start is with surviving wipes. We don't get many if any major wipes these days. That means you should be keeping all your ships and money through any major patches. However, just like the glorious inconsistency you experience every time you click on a Red Resort video, there is a sometimes functioning procedure one should undertake to avoid massive losses to the sarlacc that is the Star Citizen database. These losses can usually occur as we go from one patch to another, and all your equipment and ships is reset to your home location. The proper and official response is that you should store all your ships in your home inventory in the stored state. So not the claim state, not the unknown or destroyed state, stored. Now, a lot of people like to strip out their components and store them separately in local inventory. That one's up to you, I've heard mixed results. Also make sure you empty any boxes into local inventory as well, or you risk losing the contents. That includes backpacks and armour pockets. Make sure you finish up any refinery orders and sell cargo you've got lying around as well. We're going to be coming back to websites a lot through this video, but if you'd like to keep up with the progress of any patches that may be heading your way, you can find it on the Star Citizen Spectrum page under patch notes. When these patch notes start to say RC in the title for release candidate, that is when you want to start thinking about tying up your loose ends. Also, you might hear different advice about what you should do during this period. At this point, I think everyone just has their own personal song and dance to perform to RN Jesus in the hopes of keeping their precious belongings. Personally, I like to stand at ASOP terminals in the starport and bring each ship up and store it again. But like I say, that's possibly just my shamanic shrine and incense party to make me feel at peace. I honestly might as well just stick feathers up my ass and try and fly. Next up is getting equipped for battle. I mean, you probably could make do with just sticking on any old thing you find in the shops and experiment, but there are some things to consider when getting ready for some fisticuffs. First off, what attachments should you use? For optics, ideally you want a Tau Plus Scorched for size 2 barrels, or a Delta Scorched for size 1 barrels. Now, obviously this doesn't mean all the other sights in the game make you blind, but both of these will give you some options as you can adjust the zoom using shift. They also give you some small advantages in aim down sight time and recoil harshness. The problem is where to find them. You can't buy them, and I currently can't find the things in the new patch, but typically you'll find them around the contested zones. Check the pinned comment for the location and I'll update it as soon as possible. The 250E laser pointer. This goes on your underbarrel and can reduce your shot spread by about 12%. You can find it in these locations. Compensators help a lot as well. You want the Scion Tweaker compensator for ballistic and the E-mod stabilizers for energy. The guns in the game are constantly in flux in how they are balanced. Right now the PA SMC is great fun to have for most situations. You honestly can't go wrong. For NPC crowd control, the FS9 is still my go-to. Loads of ammo, nice range, except no substitute. The PA AR is another great weapon for piling up bodies. Excellent power, semi-automatic, fantastic accuracy and range. For snipers, the P6 LR is really good, but I prefer the scalpel. Either will do though. Very high damage, fires 2 rounds at once, bullet speed is exceptional. Taking a sidearm is an option as well, but generally I'd recommend using that slot for a med gun and your other slot for a tractor beam. Tactically, this helps your survivability and you can tractor guns and bodies to your location to loot them. I will occasionally pack a silenced pistol in a backpack though, just in case a stealth option arises. And as the NPCs and animals become more aware and responsive these days, I find I'm tending to use it more and more often for solo ops. There have been a few new guns added to the game, and they do seem OP as hell, but I feel like they're likely to get balanced in the nerf direction, so I'll stick with just recommending what I know for now. Also, I pretty much just hate all energy weapons for no real justifiable reason. It's possible I have some deep ingrained PTSD from the Needler and Halo multiplayer. Not only that, but there are too many random drawbacks, like they don't shoot through ship shields and they get too hot on warm planets and things like that. Most of these tips came from the queen of PvP herself, Min Min, who literally runs all the tests on these guns to make sure they match the stats. I've gave you the guns that I use the most, but she's got a video that will definitely open up all your options and explain why some guns are better for different scenarios. You'll find a link to that below. For armour, all you really need to consider is what sort of mission you're about to do. Right now, armours are basically a balance between damage reduction and movement speed, but if you know you're going to be in any kind of gunfight, you're going to want to go heavy pretty much all of the time. There are things to consider like local temperature, but to be honest, I don't think those settings are dialed in enough for you to consider it a problem for the majority of the time. The only real time you might have an issue is if for some reason you have a 2-kilometre jog in a really hot or cold place and are only in an undersuit. A small consideration is radiation these days, but it only occurs in 1 or 2 scenarios, and if you have heavy armour on, the majority of it can already be survived. All these things will change one day though, so just always be aware of that. A couple of binds you might like to be aware of. Pressing J will bring up your weapon customization. You can also do this by holding F and right clicking your gun. You can use the scroll wheel here to cycle through any options you have on your person, including your backpack. The other way to do this is just to drag the item from your backpack into the slot from your inventory. But this way is much cooler and usually faster. You can use U to toggle your underbarrel attachment on and off. If you press Alt left and 1, you can re-pull your ammo. Make sure you're holding the weapon in your hands and it will re-pull the ammo you have attached to your body and restock any missing slots. It also goes through your backpack and gets rid of any wasted space there as well. To carry your weapon lowered to avoid unnecessary tension around other players, you can press left Alt and R. Okay, let's move on to ships. There's a literal ton of stuff to cover here, so it's gonna get a bit technical and long-winded, but these should be massively useful to new players that are still learning the systems of the game. Let's start with components. In your mobi-glass, you can access your vehicle manager app. First things first, if you remove your quantum drive, you will also remove your jump drive. If you don't stick this back on when you're done, you won't be able to jump through wormholes between solar systems. It's a pain in the ass to remember, but if you forget, you can always pick up another one at the wormhole jump stations. The components in the game come in 5 general classes: industrial, stealth, civilian, military, and competition. Obviously, they all have strengths and weaknesses, and I've no doubt a lot of what that entails is probably quite apparent already. But let's go over them real quick. Military: combat efficiency and survival, high power output and strong durability, lightning fast regeneration. Not stealthy though, and tend to run on the hot side. Useful for when you want to go in like a sledgehammer in a petting zoo. Downside is they are expensive and in some cases impossible to buy, and repair cost is excessive as well. They also consume more power than civilian or stealth parts. Stealth parts will basically make you into a slinky little rat in the rafters. On this screen here you can see your signature output. Left is your infrared, middle is your electromagnetic, and right is your cross section, i.e. the size of your ship from top down. These determine at what distance you can be picked up on enemy radar. This also depends on what radar the enemy has, but for now, let's just keep things simple. You will be picked up by whichever one of these is the highest. Obviously, you can't change your cross section, but it will be lower than what's displayed here if you're nose on towards your target. The number underneath those is the ambient noise in the environment. The atmosphere around you gives off its own heat, for example. Other ships can completely mask your electro signal, and you can hide behind hills and in valleys for a drastic reduction in detection range. So you subtract the bottom number from the top number to give your actual detectable value. Now, your stealth components are lower power draw and low heat and EM signature. The main downside is lower power capacity, and they aren't designed for prolonged engagement as they are pretty fragile. Great for slipping in undetected though. Civilian is your everyday reliability and affordability. Average performance across the board, easy to maintain with decent power and cooling. These can be useful in a lot of stealth builds as well. The best civilian quantum drive, for example, is very fast, but its output signal doesn't add a massive amount to your signature. Same with the shields. For industrial, as you can imagine, are high durability and strong power output. The downsides are that they are slow to respond and will light you up like a crack pipe on benefit day. For example, the shields have a very high pull but are slow to come back if they get taken down. The QT drive is fast, but spool time is massive between jumps. I still use them a lot though on those sledgehammer builds, but that's mostly because I'm an idiot and I have no belief that my shields will ever get taken down. They are far more accessible than the military parts though, and almost as durable. And if you have a bigger ship that needs a lot of power to get fully up and running, they can be tempting. For smaller ships though, civilian is usually the better option. Then we have competition. These are essentially high performance parts, high output, reasonable signal ratio, but dismal durability. I can usually find a lot of good stealth components in Cousin Crows and Orison, and the best industrial stuff in New Babbage. Everything else is pretty spread out across the solar system. To find most things though, we'll be using Erkul. This is one of many third-party resources we'll be covering in this video. Let's go through an example so you get an idea of how I would change a ship for a specific purpose. Let's take the Aurora LN. This is the military variant and comes with 2 extra guns equipped and some missiles. It's awesome. First off, it's a small ship and the cross section is tiny. I don't intend on using it specifically for PvP, so let's lean more towards stealth. We can see here our output is pretty high. That's because of all the military components. First off, let's drop a cooler and change the other one to the highest class stealth one we can find. You can see the grade A isn't available for sale, meaning you'd have to find it around the place in somebody else's ship or in a contested zone. So let's take Vapor Block grade B and we can get it at Cousin Crows. Cool. As you can see, we've already knocked a massive amount off our signature there. And our power assignment for weapons, engines and shields are maxed out. Let's do power next though. Stealth grade B Delta Max. Now our EM signature is down a lot, but we've lost a lot of pips to play with, so managing that will become a more manual affair. Trickier, but worth it. We aren't building a fighter anyway, we're building a get in, hit hard and get out ship. A single small bounty target will be our ideal prey. For shields, we are way down here at military grade D, which is fine, but we can get similar performance for less signature by going civilian grade A. So we're going to stick a pair of Concords on there. Last up is the Quantum Drive. Nobody likes to be sitting around doing nothing for 5 minutes straight. So this needs to be as fast as possible for the least amount of signal. But as you can see, QT drives don't put out a massive amount of infrared naturally. So we're safe to go civilian grade A here again. It's looking like we're pretty much stuck with an infrared around 11k. And we could get that to around 10 with all the stealth parts, but to be honest, it wouldn't be worth the downgrade. It's just not a naturally stealthy ship. And you're probably thinking, since we get detected at whatever's the highest out of these 3, that means we can afford to bring our EM signal up a bit more without increasing our overall detection range. And what else gives off hardly any infrared naturally? Shields. Very low IR but high EM. So we could stick some industrial shields on there and still remain as stealthy as possible. The only thing to keep in mind is that in a smaller craft there is a lot higher chance of you breaking away from a fight and finding a window to recharge your shields. And comparing the two, the industrial shields will take around 1 second longer to get back up to full, as you can see here. They are both 12.5 seconds to get back up to full, but the delay before they start charging again is 1 second apart. I'm gonna take the chance on that for the extra shield pull off the industrial. Perfect, our not so stealthy Aurora is ready to go. But wait, watch what happens when we switch from combat mode to nav mode. Womp. Yeah, Now we're visible as hell cause that civilian QT drive is not helping out. So what does that mean? It means for this stealth build to work, you really need to get into combat mode a lot further away from your target. Give your ship a chance to cool down and dissipate all that extra signal from the QT drive. And obviously, the higher that signal is to begin with, the longer that will take. So if you're just building a general ship for getting things done and getting around quickly, you really need to consider what components to use to balance all these things out. Also, watch this. Yep, that's right. Reducing the shield power will knock an absolute ton off your EM signal. Now that doesn't matter in this build because the IR signal is so high, but something to keep in mind. Just don't turn them off completely unless you need to, otherwise they will need to charge again, and you might not be the only one with a stealth ship around these parts. You can also find stats for all of the weapons on Erkul as well. Things to keep in mind are, if you're fighting something fast moving, you're looking for something with fast bullet speed and fire rate, meaning you'll land more shots over time. This will help keep opponents' shields down. The CF series are a very good option. And if you're going to be using a mixed build of laser and ballistic for your weapons, a big difference in bullet speed will mean having vastly separated weapons reticules. So make sure you check that stat and get something that matches up quite well. The complete circle is your lasers and the other one is your ballistics. As you start moving up the enemy ship size, you can go for slower, more powerful projectiles. The M series from Bering are a particular favourite for when your target is too large to miss, and the deadbolts with attritions being a particular favourite as well. Finding and affording all these components can be a challenge. It's good to keep in mind you can strip these out of ships you find lying around the verse. Other players' ships being a particularly good source for finding nice and often rare parts. You can tractor these out once a ship is destroyed, but you can also board the ship and hit the unlock porch button, which is right Alt-K from the pilot seat. Be aware though that not all ships currently have this functionality, and if you're switching out your components on the fly whilst out in space, be sure to save your ship configuration when you land somewhere. Store it and change a little something, save it, and then change it back and save it again. Make sure you restock any ordnance you've fired before doing this, or it will save your current missing missiles as well. Speaking of missiles, there's a setting called Armed Missiles Can Loop. This allows you to go back to 1 after 4 when selecting the number of missiles ready to fire. So it will now go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 in a loop. This will save you a whole ass bind on whatever contraption you entrust your life unto. If you ever get yourself a bigger ship that has turrets but you're only flying it solo, it pays to remove any lasers you have on your turrets. This will usually give more capacitor for the laser weapons to the pilot. You can replace the turrets with ballistics in the meantime. Another cool thing, especially for larger ships, is to set the open all doors bind toggle. This is a must-have setting for so many reasons. You land and press it and it opens all your internal and external doors, giving you a clear run through your ship to an exit. Some guys are running towards your ship and they don't look too friendly, you can button yourself up. Or maybe you're picking people up and want to look like you're really in control of your shit. Mostly though, it's so once you take off and realise your back door has been left open, you don't need to get out your seat or fly around looking like you've grew a set of ass flaps. Couple of other binds and settings you might want to have a look at. The pilot velocity indicator. That's this thing that shows your current direction of travel. Set this to always on. You can use this to be very precise about where you're heading. Great for dodging terrain and locking in a landing spot. Running your ship in decoupled mode can have a few benefits as well. This releases the ship to just keep drifting in its current direction. Mostly in space though, as air friction will eventually slow you down in atmosphere. The keybind is C, and it's useful for keeping yourself constantly moving whilst in dogfights. It's also good for saving you holding buttons during longer duration flights. You can also leave it on and get out your seat and your ship will keep drifting along. Similar to that is the cruise control bind. One maintains a current speed and the bind is left Alt C. The other is a throttle trim and the bind is blank by default. I'd say this one is more useful for flight sticks, but it maintains a current throttle input. Bear in mind, 100% throttle in atmosphere will be a lot slower than in space, so don't just set that as you leave the ground and aim at a station then get distracted. You can lock your pitch, yaw controls as well with left shift. If you're anything like me, I set cruise control, aim for the clouds, and then start doom scrolling YouTube shorts. Last thing you want is to look up and those clouds have taken on a distinctly rocky composition. In that situation, there is another bind that might just save your space bacon. Pressing K will enable VTOL if your ship has them. That means vertical takeoff and landing, and will switch your primary thrust from coming out your ass to coming from your belly. Newton's caress can be avoided easier this way than doing a whole flip and burn. Also, switching to combat mode in the current build is a good strategy, but that might be gone in the near future, replaced with something hopefully more realistic. One thing that took me ages to learn was how to dock a ship, and to be honest, I truthfully still don't know how to dock a ship. If you steal a big fat ship somehow and fly up to a station and hit request landing, you'll be met with this hieroglyphic ballet of lights and pad denial. This means the station doesn't have a big enough hangar and you have to use the docking collar. And you may think I'm just getting old, but listen to Unk, guys. Line up your nose with that sucker and hold in. That's it. The ship will do the rest. Don't press that from any other orientation or the ship will try and traverse straight through the station, costing you hundreds of millions in repairs. Not that anybody ever pays for repairs on a capital ship. On to ship combat now. It's possible to pin targets. Now, I've never really found this too useful, to be honest, as your primary target is usually highlighted anyway, and everything's pretty chaotic once you get too close. Plus, when you get out of radar range, pins disappear anyway. What it is good for though is pinning bigger ships you'd rather keep your distance from, like hammerheads and things with loads of turrets. They can be pinned at massive ranges by using left alt 1, 2 or 3. You can then lock them using 1, 2 or 3 on their own. You can use 0 to clear pins. For general locking targets that aren't in front of your ship, there's lock closest enemy on 5 and lock closest attacker on 4. All simple stuff, but if you're not into trawling through binds, you might have missed them. Taking out turrets in the game can be a bit of a pain, especially in a smaller ship. Your best bet is to find some cover to begin with, somewhere in range but not in sight of the turrets. Then you're going to want to use your zoom gunnery, should be on your right click. Do a radar ping, lock the turret and just peek over and shoot, making sure to duck back down again before your shield hits 0. If for some reason your weapons aren't focused on the turret, and they should be these days, there's a pair of binds you can set for weapons convergence mode. This will allow you to focus your weapons at a certain point in the distance. If you're in a small ship, you will probably have a bubble shield. In most larger ships though, you have a shield with several faces. If it's applicable and you don't have a turret off to your side to worry about, you can put full power to your forward shield, giving it a higher maximum health pool. Be careful with this one though, because these turrets are lethal and will carve you up in a mere few seconds if your shields aren't working properly. Okay, that was a bit of a slog. So, apologies for that. This is just going to be one of those very informationally dense videos, I'm afraid. Next up is how to protect yourself whilst flying around. It may seem obvious to most, but there are a few things you can do to stop yourself being pirated when moving from one place to the next. First off, you need to be aware that there are some things that pilots with nefarious intent can deploy to trap you. Quantum dampeners and quantum snares. Snares will pull you out of quantum if you fly through an area within its effect. Dampeners will stop your quantum drive from operating, so you can no longer get away. Common places to set these up would be the orbital markers around planets that we use to navigate. So, say you have a cargo full of stuff you don't want to lose and it needs to be delivered. How can you avoid falling prey? Mostly, it's about how you plan your journey. So, say you're here at this refining station and you want to go to Seraphim. What I'd do is I'd aim for one of these mining bases out to the side, and then when I got there, I'd aim for somewhere else in that system, and then break the jump halfway through. Then I'd aim for Seraphim. If you do this from too far away, it will sometimes still send you towards the planet, so be ready to break the jump again and re-target Seraphim. This ensures your drop point is as truly random as possible. Secondly, you should plan this route and have the first jump set up before you even leave your hangar, in case there's someone waiting outside. How likely is this to happen to you? It's not impossible. It depends what you're shifting and how easy it is for pirates to predict. Also, they don't need to be pirates. People will kill you for absolutely zero reason whatsoever, because they can, and the penalty right now is practically zero. So, keep the chat open. Check it for messages that might sound like mischief in your area. Use your radar. employ a bit of stealth and savvy, and hopefully you'll keep slipping through the nets. Okay, next we're going to talk about some third-party resources for the game, of which there are many. As you've probably noticed, the in-game solutions to finding anything is substandard, you could say. Let's quickly go through some of the best resources out there. You've seen Erkul, great for both finding where ships and components are sold and testing out different loadouts for damage potential. What I didn't tell you though is that you can also use it to compare between a lot of things as well, using this here. You can take any ship, weapon or component and compare their data side by side. Another good site for this is SP Viewer. This essentially does the same thing but in far more granular detail. You can also compare any changes made with the new patches side by side as well. Perfect for watching with teary eyes as your brand new $300 ship gets nerfed into obsolescence. If you're thinking about doing some industrial gameplay, whether that's mining, salvaging or hauling, there's a bunch of very helpful sites that you're going to want to become familiar with. First one is UEX. All the commodities, who's buying them, who's selling them, what size boxes they are in, what the profit margins are. And you really need to pay attention to what size boxes the place you're selling to will accept. If you're buying from a station, you can reasonably assume you're pretty safe. Anything that has a low amount for a very high value at a ground outpost you can bet will be a far riskier trading option. The Armory is excellent for finding FPS gear and armour and so on. You can create a shopping list on there and it will tell you which areas to look for which items if they aren't in stores. The Verse Guide is useful for finding points of interest that aren't marked on the game's maps. This could be crash sites, caves, or other just general interesting things on planet surfaces around the place. It also allows you to see what time of day it is, allowing you to plan your trips accordingly. Again, utterly invaluable stuff. The in-game map does give you some info about what's at each station and what services you can expect to find there, but as of yet you cannot search for items and components or anything like that. The official website is also a great place to check regularly as well. There's various seasonal events going on all year round. Literally every few weeks these guys are putting up competitions, hosting in-game events and trying to sell you all manner of FOMO-inducing stuff. Patch bundles, paints, gears, ships, you name it. If you miss them, they usually come back around the next year, but it's sometimes worth to keep an eye out in case something pops up that you like. At Christmas, for example, there's 12 days of free stuff given away for just logging in, and you can pick up ship skins and guns and festive jumpers and the like. Not essential, but something to do whilst you're stuck at work and want to Star Citizen away from Star Citizen. There's also lots of lore and stories and general background stuff for you to gorge on in the comlink section. You can keep up with development or even pop over to the community hub to see what everyone else has been getting up to in game. There's another few things you can do on the official website that are reasonably important to know as well. The first is melting. Most of the things you buy in the store go into your web hanger. That can be paints, gear and even ships. What's very useful to know is that you can melt these items for store credit. So say you buy a paint and you don't like it, or you just like something else better, you can hit exchange and free up some funds for something else. Just don't melt your game package or you won't have a game anymore. Related to that are buybacks. The things that we melt are all contained on a list called buybacks. This is a token you receive every 3 months that allows you to buy back a pledge that you already melted. Why would you need to do that? Because it's possible it's a ship or a skin that's no longer on sale, as is the case with most of these things at various times throughout the year. Maybe it was a rare edition that launched with a cool skin or something like that. You can use your buyback token to get it back. You can also use the previously mentioned store credit to pay for it. This goes for pretty much all the digital stuff that you can buy from the store. There are things that you cannot buy back though. Most notable are the upgrades that are already applied to a ship, or what you would call applied CCUs. So, let's get into that. CCUs are short for cross chassis upgrades, and essentially allow you to take a current ship in your web hanger, not one you've bought in game, and pay an amount to upgrade it to another ship. So, say for example you have the Drake Cutter Rambler as your starter. You can pay £10 to upgrade that to the 300i, the Avenger Stalker, Titan, or a 125A. And yes, that is another masterstroke of marketing genius, and how a lot of players end up to their eyeballs in spaceships they could have bought in game. Because this only costs you a tenner, and it means you can essentially work your way up to a subjectively better ship, but should you, is the question. Well, I'm not here to tell you how or when to spend your money. Some people don't have time for grinding at all, others think the money is pretty easy to make in the game. All I know is that it's a slippery slope, and I personally wish I didn't have most of the ships I have, so I can start the game when it launches with a clean slate. You know, get that feeling of that initial grind and hardship. The potential downside is that you subtract a decent chunk of the intended progression from the game once it releases by just paying your way through. In the meantime though, they're good to have for testing the game and having fun, and when new ships come out they normally stay on the online store for a few months before being buyable in game. So if you have a nice little pot of credit there, you can just keep melting ships to try out any new ones that come along. Keep in mind, you can buy CCU upgrades with store credit as well. Now, you can save quite a bit of money using these chains of CCUs over what a ship would normally cost at full price. Every now and then you get what's called War Bond CCUs. War Bond basically means you can't buy it with store credit, but if you chain enough War Bond CCUs together you can end up with an expensive ship for half the cost. But it takes a lot of time and patience, years in some cases. On the upgrade screen, the left is upgrade from and the right is upgrade to. You'll see this ship has two prices. The cheaper one is if you pay with new money, so not store credit. So let's select that one. Now if I select all ships instead of my ships and arrange by most expensive, these are all the ships at the next value down from the one on the right. And I don't own any of these ships, but that doesn't matter. Meaning if I select one that I'd maybe like to fly for a while as I move through my upgrade chain, I can add this upgrade to my web hanger without actually needing to apply it. It can just sit there for years if need be, until I work my way up to the raft, say. Then when I upgrade from the raft to this shiv on the right, I will have saved that small amount of money. If I can make a chain that has a few of these cheaper Warbond steps along the way, I feel like I'm winning. And now you see how CIG has made so much freaking money and how they get their hooks into you. Because chaining these up can become quite addictive. Not only that, but it means you can still be star citizening on the train on the way to work to pay for your new spaceship habit. But watch yourself out there. If you have low impulse control, this shit ain't for you. Remember, you're paying for an infinitely reproducible asset that you can get for a reasonable amount of grinding game. If you don't care, on the other hand, fill your boots. It's a nice little meta game to pick away at in the background, and it all helps to fund the game that we know and love. The only other thing that you need to know is that you can't buy back these CCU chains once they are applied. You can buy back CCUs on their own if you decide to melt them, but not once it's been applied to a ship. For example, here's a cutter I bought a long time ago. I've since upgraded it a few times to a wolf. If I was to melt that package, I'd get the store credit value of all the CCUs plus the original ship, and the cutter would go into my buybacks. If I tried to buy it back, it would just be a cutter again for 45 bucks or whatever the current price is. These skins and stuff that I picked up along the way that were attached to the upgrades would also be gone. Only things that were part of the original pledge will remain. So if the cutter came with a skin, I would get that back obviously. So yeah, it's pretty deep and nuanced, and it may have been too early in your space flight career to hit you with all of that, but it never hurts to keep people informed. The only other thing you need to know about the store is that there's a secret store that's only for subscribers. So you pay them money once a month so that you can buy more stuff. Yeah. And in that store you can buy a bobblehead. You can equip this to a slot on your ship management screen right here, and it will appear in your cockpit. This is like the most important thing in this whole video, because look at it. It's a bobblehead, just sitting there, bobbling about. Like, what more could you ask for? Imagine playing this game for 2 years and not even knowing this existed. I'd have let you down, let's face it. You're happier now. Slightly poorer financially, but happier overall. You're welcome. Just check the ship that you intend to buy it for has this slot, and we'll not talk about the other hidden store. You're better off not even knowing about that one. Don't need to know about that. If you ever find out about it, then that slippery slope I mentioned earlier, yeah, you're surfing that dude, careening down there. Most likely to an early divorce. Moving on, one other suggestion I'd make is to be constantly sending friend requests to everyone you see. You can approach people in game and hold F and send friend request. What this does is it allows them to appear as online on the right side of your main menu for you to join in on. Why would your antisocial ass want to do that? Well, don't worry, in all likelihood you'll never see them again. The reason you want to do that is that it gives you options about which server you can join. Sometimes a server can just be plain dog shit, and you need to go and find a new one. Check this list for a low population server and join on that. And that can have upsides, like there will be less enemy players at a given site that you would like access to. Now, that doesn't always go in your favour. Sometimes the server's empty because it's absolutely crippled and no one wants to play on it anymore. But generally, the lower the population, the more performant the server will be. You can check a server's performance by pressing the tilde key, then typing R display info space 1. First 4 lines are your current position, then your FPS. Under that is the server FPS. Anything over 20 is awesome, under 10 starts to become problematic. The line under that tells you what your server location is. You can see it says EU for Europe. Shard is the number of people in your game, and server is the number of people currently hosted on your section of the game. So around your current planet, for example. And that's about it really. You can type display info 0 to get rid of it again. I wanted to try and go over what are some good upgrade paths through the available ships, and I've thought about it for quite some time and realised the section would be absolutely massive if it was to be of any use to anyone. You know, what ship should I get after my Titan Avenger starter pack with in-game money? That's a really tough question. And it depends. What game loops do you enjoy? Does your next ship need to specialise for cargo, say, or combat, or somewhere in between? Is it just a general runaround? Will you miss the speed, manoeuvrability and firepower of your Titan no matter what you do? Yes, you will. And I just kinda got bogged down in a sea of ship soup, to be honest. The best answer I can give is that there is no path. Sure, you might have a need for a particular playstyle, but what if you object to the aesthetic I suggest? I went the origin route into small combat because I loved the idea of blowing up some fools, then sipping coffee in the lap of luxury whilst orbiting a gas giant. What if you're more of a rugged space junker who's fine with pissing in a bucket and clogging hull breaches with, you know, whatever's left of your dignity? What I will suggest is that there are a few ways you may be able to try out a ship before you commit to a purchase. First off is just ask in chat. It's often the easiest option. Just explain and you'll get good advice and opinions in there, usually about why you're getting the wrong ship. But if you're, persist, someone will help you out. You could also look up the ship on Erkul and see if it's rentable. If it's not, check if maybe one of its variants are, and then use a YouTube review or comparison video to fill in the gaps in your knowledge. Third option is to wait until IAE in November, where all the ships in the game are rentable, and you can test them out and write down the ones you'd like to invest in over the coming year. Invictus also lets you rent a lot of the military ships as well, and that happens in May. But yeah, there's no straight path, and you might mess up, but to be honest, there's not really an abundance of bad ships in the game either. I've been happy with every one I've stepped foot in, to be honest, and no matter what you do, no matter where you find yourself, standing on the bridge of a Star Destroyer even, you'll always want to crawl back into that starter ship like a mother's womb. Okay, that was too far. Anyway, I hope that's helped you all out somewhat. A massive thank you to the guys on Discord for helping me out with this one, with, suggestions and stuff. To Rodiac, Jado, Ivan, Dionysus, Nova, Soapy Weasel, Sol Ranger, Hans Bricks. Sorry if I missed anyone. Stay tuned for the weekly SC news that includes all the coolest community made content we can find, or the full Spectrum Warriors series where we discuss the community's concerns and dreams, voiced over on the forums. Thanks for watching. 07 guys.